this clip is about, Whitney and Bobby, and I think what you see in it is really Bobby and Whitney's unbelievable chemistry. They have this incredible relationship. Bobby was an amazing performer who was amazing in his own right, but I think when you see the two of them together, they're so sexually charged, and they had such fun together on stage and off stage. And I think Rudy shot this scene so beautifully. It's all shot on a rail, and it's all in one shot. So you just really get a sense of performance. I think the advantage of having a camera on a rail is you have this incredible fluidity. You're really a part of it. It's so much better than cutting between different cameras for different angles, because performance is all about continuity, and that's something amazing that film can do. And I think when you see the two of them together, they're just, you can tell, they're just so in love with each other. They're so, Whitney looks so thrilled to be with Bobby on stage. And I think increasingly, Bobby became the big influence, and that was very difficult, I think, for Robin Crawford. They had a very intense relationship, and it wasn't just that, I think they were like two kids together, really. And they came from the same kind of background. They had the same kind of references. Whitney loved how raw he was, how outrageous he was, because she had a lot of mischief in her too. And that's just where they were. And I think Pattie Howard says in this film, Pattie Howard was very, very close to Whitney. She came from a gospel background too. And she talked about how Whitney and Bobby had this amazing relationship of acceptance. They could be exactly who they were with each other. And I think for a lot of Whitney's life, it was very hard for her to be herself. She always had to be the American princess. But she and Bobby shared the same background. They shared a lot of fame together, and they could relax with each other. And there was a real love there. And although I think it was very difficult for Bobby to be Mr. Whitney Houston, and his own career kind of went down, they did have a really very intense, loving relationship. And I think in later years he tried to control things with Whitney by having lots of affairs with the singers and things like that, which was, I think, his attempt to be, a little bit of the man of the relationship, and that brought a lot of tension into their relationship. Whitney was a very, very religious person. A lot of her music came from being gospel choirs and being very spiritual, really, being very into God and reading her Bible, and gospel was obviously such an influence to her and an inspiration to her. And I think the more successful she became, the more religious she became. Oddly enough, when she was heavily into drugs, it was the Bible she was reading mainly and hoping that God would help her. And she was so in love with her daughter, Bobbi Kristina. And I think it was very difficult for her because she was often on tour for months and months and months away from Bobbi Kristina, but Bobbi Kristina would come on tour with them occasionally. So she grew up in this kind of slightly strange atmosphere of, Whitney, a superstar. And I think this is an amazing sequence because at first you think, wow, isn't it kind of cute? Bobbi Kristina comes out and she's singing with her mom, and then you see, wow, she's probably singing in front of, I don't know, how many thousand people, and you think, what is she feeling, and then at a certain point in this footage, you see that, Bobbi Kristina is kind of in shock. She doesn't kind of know quite what to do, and Whitney is trying to get her to dance, and Bobbi Kristina, I always find I get very emotionally kind of confused and rather alarmed, because it's like, what is a 4.5-year-old doing on stage in front of all these thousands of people? What on earth is going through Bobbi KRISTINA's mind. And then you kind of, I guess, get the conflict, some of the conflict of Whitney's life is, you know, she's this massive star. She loves her kid. What are the boundaries? And it's such an unreal existence, you know. And I find it one of the most troubling scenes in a way in the film, and it doesn't hit you that way when you first see it, but it really creeps up on you subliminally. And again, brilliantly shot by Rudy. The person speaking on this clip is Pattie Howard, who was one of Whitney's closest friends, who absolutely loved her. She's also very Christian, and she was the bass singer for Whitney. She is a teeny woman, but Whitney loved her singing bass because she was so amused by seeing such a teeny person doing bass, I think. Pattie Howard was one of Whitney's most loyal friends, and she felt that the world was so unappreciative of her, that Whitney had made millions and millions of people happy, and the world sort of turned on her, judged her so harshly for being into drugs at the end, and made things so much worse for Whitney. And she felt that Whitney was a performer who gave more than anybody else she could think of.